What's up, everyone? This is Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean. I'm here with my co-host Ian Gibson. How are you?
Thank God it's hockey season.
Yeah, the Lightning are getting
besides tonight.
They beat Florida yesterday, so that's good.
But, saved the day yesterday.
Yeah, so a bit of a whirlwind for the teams we covered outside of USC getting a huge win, but it's tough. You get losses. You play good teams. It's just no guarantee you're going to win all these games. But let's jump into it. So this is the Week 12 recap. The first game we have on, I believe it was Friday, Clemson, Louisville. So we actually covered 18 games this week, and it's like I almost positive it's the most we've ever covered because I don't recall a weekend of being that many games. And these are, out of these 18 games, almost all of them are playoff implications, which is pretty remarkable. Outside of that G5 game, which I actually saw most of the highlight package up into the fourth quarter. You'd be proud of me for that. So let's move into it. So Clemson, Louisville. This game, was back and forth. Clemson, had a lead, and then Louisville was just staying with them the whole way, and then they took the lead, and then then Clemson gets the lead in the fourth quarter. Then Louisville has like multiple chances to go for the win with the field goal late. Like they had one with like 4 minutes left, and they had one with like a minute or two left, and they just couldn't hit any of them. The field goal kicker was just wide left every time. And, this was a game, honestly, it was super close. Like it could have gone either way. Like, both teams deserved it. Klubnik didn't look great, but he did enough to, put them in position to win. Miller Moss looked all right. The run game was really the difference in this game because Brown for Louisville and Randall for Clemson both had 100 yards. Chris Bell had a good game. Chris Bell's a great receiver. He had a huge game against Miami earlier in the year. So, but Louisville takes the loss here, and basically at this point, we're going to talk about this as well because Ian knows all the scenarios. So I tasked Ian with looking up all the scenarios for. Ian said he found it for ACC, SEC, Big 12, and the American. Everything outside of the Big 10 because the Big 10 is basically decided for the most part. So, Ian, for the ACC, what does this mean for Louisville?
So Louisville is effectively pretty much out of it with their losses. Louisville, the 3 conference losses, that puts them way on the outside looking in, and especially with the fact that every other team ahead of them only has 1 loss. So Miami and Duke are ahead, and what needs to happen now in the ACC, do you want to just go through the scenarios on how each of these teams make it to the ACC championship?
Yeah, honestly, why don't we save it for each team?
Okay.
We'll jump into it each team because we with all these games, we basically cover all of the playoff caliber teams. Okay, so do you have any thoughts on this one before we move to the next one?
I mean, this was a heartbreaker, but I think the biggest thing was that Louisville, the biggest thing was the 10 penalties that they accrued in this game, especially the one where they missed the field goal at 47 yards. It was like a 3rd and 29 based on the 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. Whether warranted or not, on refs throwing the flag, you got to have better discipline in this close of a game. But Clemson was not looking good. They were very beatable. This is one of those games that Louisville is going to be kicking themselves because this is one that got away. They were the better team, in my opinion, in this game, but they could not put Clemson away. Yeah, the missed field goals, but I think the undisciplined play at the end and just being, completely kept off the scoreboard in the fourth quarter, I mean, that was what really killed Louisville in this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame because it's like Louisville had everything in front of them. If they win out, they really had a shot because they play, I believe, SMU next week, and that would have eliminated one of your people in front of you that you have a shot to get into. And now it's like it's done. Like this, they have no realistic shot of actually making it because they have the loss against Virginia, the loss against Clemson, and then the loss against Cal. So yeah, like you said, 3 conference losses in a row. Okay, let's move on to Minnesota, Oregon, another Friday night game. Dante Moore just looking amazing. Again, he's a West Coast player, so you don't see as much hype about him because he plays late or whatever. People just don't see their games. Outside of like the Penn State game, really, like in the Indiana game. But Dante Moore has put up huge numbers. He was 27 of 30 here in this game, 306 yards, 2 TDs. They pretty much dominated Minnesota. Minnesota's offense really couldn't do much all game outside of like a few possessions where they had gotten turnovers to really like get them closer, or the one turnover actually. But outside of that, Oregon just outmuscled them. Sadiq had a huge game. The running backs for Oregon went off. They had 510 yards of offense to Minnesota's 200. So it was a dismantling. This game was never close. I didn't think it would be coming into it. I kind of thought Oregon was the better team and it shouldn't really be that close. But it really does set up next week because Oregon with 1 loss and USC with 2 losses, monster game, because essentially that's a playoff eliminator for the most part. I can see Oregon getting in with only 2 losses if they lose that game. They're not going to the Big Ten championship more than likely, but 2 losses could be tough. But I think if USC loses, they're definitely eliminated. So huge game. I honestly, if I had a little bit more money, I would make the effort and go up there just because it would be kind of fun. I've always wanted to go to Autzen, to the stadium, and in Eugene, but I just, for whatever reason, it's just never worked out. But your thoughts on this game before we move on?
Yeah, Oregon just took care of business. Clearly, the big game, obviously, is USC, and then they have the rivalry game with Washington to end the year on. With that center, I mean, I did look up a little bit of the Big Ten, but obviously Indiana, Ohio State, they just need to win out. For SC to get in along with Oregon, Oregon needs, obviously, Michigan to beat Ohio State again, and then they're in while Oregon wins out. But that is an eliminator game because if either one of those 2 win, it eliminates the other.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Next game we have into Saturday games. Indiana versus Wisconsin. Kind of a like slow pace game at first. It was like 7-7, and then Indiana gets that late field goal in the second half, and then they kind of take off in the second half, or before the second half, and then they take off in the second half. And Fernando Mendoza, huge game, 4 TDs, nearly 300 yards, only 2 incompletions. Mendoza and Dante Moore are some of the most efficient quarterbacks in the entire country. They just like very rarely throw picks and very rarely throw incompletions. They're very like methodical. Mendoza is probably a little faster than Dante Moore, even though Dante Moore is not immobile, but he's just not like known for his running style. Mendoza can take off, and he does take off a little bit. But as far as Indiana in this game, again, Becker has a huge game. Surratt was not in the lineup today for Indiana, so they had to rely on other sources of offense there. And Noah Kowski, I mean, this guy, he's a 5th-year senior, had a huge game, a touchdown, and he was just making plays all over the field, which was pretty nice to see from a guy like that who's like kind of an afterthought for the most part with Indiana's offense. But he was making plays. Cooper, another guy, he's the one that had that touchdown against Penn State at the end of that game, and he had a decent game with a touchdown. Indiana just marches on. They right now, as far as like what's left, I mean, it's Purdue, and that's it. So, this team, it's penciled in. Like I have no doubt in my mind that they're going to destroy Purdue. They beat Purdue last year like 66-0 or whatever. So I feel like it's going to be the same thing. So you can pencil in Indiana to the Big Ten championship game. But what did you say about Ohio State again? I just want to
if Ohio State loses to Michigan and either Oregon or USC win that one, Oregon especially would win out. And even if Indiana does drop this game to Purdue, they would be in based on the strength of schedule tiebreaker.
So Oregon gets in if Ohio State loses?
To Michigan, yes.
And if Oregon wins and Oregon beats USC, right? Well, they have to beat USC and Washington.
Yes.
Okay. The other thing I was wondering, Michigan. What is Michigan's status as far as Big Ten?
So Michigan, they would have they have to beat Ohio State, which not well unless for Michigan it hasn't been too hard for them the last couple of years. But for Michigan, they would need, if I'm remembering, I wrote this down here. Michigan needs to win out, have Indiana lose, and then USC would need to lose. So it would be Oregon and Michigan. So Oregon needs to beat USC because USC would have the better strength of schedule over Michigan. So it would have to be Oregon beats USC, they went out, and Indiana
loses
to Purdue.
Did Indiana? Okay, I know it's weird because Indiana didn't play Michigan and Oregon didn't play Michigan. So this is why I hate why this happens, because it's like we have all these big conferences and now like most of the better teams don't play each other. What they need to do is, instead of having these schedules like however they're doing it, they need to have it similar to the NFL, and they need to have it so it's like if you're a good team this year, you play a really difficult schedule next year. So like if you're playing, if you're like a top tier team next year, you're going to play all the top tier teams. So you're not just playing cupcakes. I don't know. It's kind of lame that, Michigan got to play like Michigan State and Northwestern, and they barely beat Northwestern. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but you feast on cupcakes, it makes you look real tough, but you're just not as good as you probably think you are. But let's move on. Okay. You have any thoughts on this game?
Well, for at least in this one, Indiana played kind of their game. They didn't have as many explosive plays, but they were very reliant on having the high percentage conversion. I think they were like 7 for 12 on third down, so they were just kind of nickel and diming it. They didn't need to hit the big play because Wisconsin was kind of playing back on that, so they just beat them underneath. So, oh no, and Indiana just finds ways to beat you.
Okay, moving on to South Carolina, Texas A&M. So this ended up being the largest comeback in Texas A&M history. Mm-hmm. South Carolina goes up 30-3 at halftime, and it looked over. Like it looked like Texas A&M had nothing going on. They had a little bit they had one good drive, and then that was about it in the first half. And it looked like South Carolina was just going to cruise to victory. If they just got like any semblance of offense, it probably would have resulted in them winning. They just really needed like 3 points. If they hit a field goal in that whole second half, they probably would have won. And they just couldn't do it. Texas A&M gets the lead, 28 straight points, and then gets the stop on Sellers, and just such a gut punch of a loss for South Carolina. I'm at this point, I'm not surprised. Like, this probably doesn't make the case that Beamer gets fired at some point. And I don't know if they're going to fire him this year, because if they fired Beamer this year, they're going up against, Auburn and LSU and Florida for jobs. So if they just wait a year, maybe they fire him next year, then they're going up against less competition, and they can get, I don't know, they could get someone, like John Summerall from Tulane or one of those lower tier teams, so that he could jump into a SEC team. But right now, if they fired Beamer, they would just be, in the mix with the 12 other teams that have fired their coaches. And with those top tier higher situations right now, it's it doesn't look good for South Carolina. So they don't fire him, they keep him, but this does not look good because this is a bad loss. This is one of the worst losses you'll ever take, and it does not look good. But Ian, your thoughts on this one?
I said and I remember mentioning to you, especially with this schedule they had, I was still defending Beamer on the fact of, look, they haven't lost too bad in these games. And I know like losses are still losses. I would be the first one to tell you that. But given their losses, they lost to Vanderbilt. They got blown out by Vandy. That was when we knew Vandy was legit. Then they lost to Missouri, then LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama. Alabama, LSU, they were in it. Mississippi State, they ran away with it. But this one, even though Texas A&M was number 3 in the country, this is the one where like, no, I can't excuse this one. Because this is where it matters how you lose.
Yeah.
You're up 30-3. And it's not only that, Texas A&M was dead. It wasn't just like South Carolina was playing better. A&M couldn't like just
they couldn't do anything.
They couldn't do anything right. They had the fumble recovery that was returned for a touchdown. They had, I think, the most plays they had in the first half for a drive was 5. It was like 5 plays was the most they've had in a drive. And, you know, Reed wasn't looking good. He got picked off twice. And then, meanwhile, they hit like, I think after an interception, hit the 80-yard play on, you know, one play.
Yeah.
And this is the one where I'm like, okay, maybe Beamer isn't the guy because he goes into the tunnel at halftime, pumping up the South Carolina crowd. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, don't do that. You're asking for trouble. And sure enough, just now I'm going to tip my hat to Texas A&M because as A&M fans know, in previous years, this is where they would just, you know, go into the tunnel and cave in and just, you know, accept the loss. But Elko had them fired up and was making right off the bat, first drive back, that they were, you know, in this game. They scored on almost every play on almost every drive once they got the ball back, and it was 31 unanswered. But yeah, that was a pretty impressive implosion. I've never, you know, it's been a while since I've seen a lead, you know, choked away like that, but that was insane. And that was the one game I was like, you know what, maybe this isn't good for Beamer, because not only do you blow a 30-3 lead, you go into the locker room at halftime acting like you won. Not the greatest look. It just straight up, it is not a good look. That's where you've got to like comment, because for me, just in general, I am never comfortable in any sport until I see zeros on the clock.
Yeah.
You never should feel comfortable as a coach because of all these scenarios. And this, if anybody wonders why I am always nervous depending on the score, I'm going to bring this game up as an example.
Yeah, I mean, I try to tell my wife all the time. She's like, well, your team's winning. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, stuff changes so fast in sports. You could be up 35 and then in a drop of a hat be only up by like 10. And then you've got like, you know, all the momentum on your side. Like, that's why, like, I just, you know, again, with football, a lot of people don't understand it because it's like, you know, they're like, oh, well, score is so big. But it's like, the things change so quickly, you know, onside kicks, different things, turnovers, like, you know, the momentum switches in these games are such a difference maker. And then it's like, you know, I don't know, with this game specifically, it was like you said, Beamer, why is he celebrating? Like, I saw that too. And I was like, man, like, dude, I know you're up big, but like, dude, this game is far from over. And Marcel Reed is a really good quarterback. And this Texas A&M team is very talented. They could turn it on like a dime. And if you don't do anything in the second half, you're going to get beat. And they did nothing. They literally did nothing. And it was like remarkable how inept they went from dominating the first half and then the complete opposite in the second half. So it's crazy. Okay, moving on. Next game we've got is, man, I was totally wrong on this one. And I know I have not seen a lot of Notre Dame fans come after me. I'm kind of amazed, but I guess maybe Notre Dame fans are a little respectful, and I appreciate that. You know, you guys are Midwest and like whatever, but like I was expecting to just get obliterated because I picked Pitt to win this game. But credit to Notre Dame's defense. Their defense like stymied Heinzel the whole game. It didn't help that his wide receivers had some drops early on that kind of really like changed the pace of the game. Plus, that pick six kind of changed the first half. CJ Carr looked really good again. He did have 2 picks as well, but I think they did enough on offense because especially Jeremiah Love had a huge game, 147 yards in that disgusting touchdown with a spin move.
Yeah.
Like, man, that thing was sick. And Malachi Fields had a huge game, almost 100 yards, 2 TDs. Heinzel that's his first real bad game since he took over, and I don't expect that to continue. I expect big things from this kid. He's only 18. He's looked really good in a lot of these games. Ian, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, and this was one of those games where Jeremiah Love just took over, where he's so good. To me, is still the best running back in the country. When he is on, he can take over a game like that because he was averaging 6 yards a carry. I know he only had the 1 touchdown, but they were clearly leaning on him for the whole game. He had almost 150 yards rushing, and credit to Notre Dame's defense. Yeah, Heisel, they made sure that they were not getting beat by him. They did a good job eliminating the run game. I think it was well under 100 yards Pitt had in rushing, and then Heisel only had 126. They made sure that Pitt's offense was not going to win the day, and they did. Notre Dame, this is a very good win for them, and now the path through the playoff is looking very likely because the remaining games are, Syracuse and Stanford. So this was kind of a clincher without being a clincher because this was the last real tough game they had, especially on the road. And, for Pitt, that's a tough one. Again, should have seen the warning signs when they were saying, this game isn't an eliminator. It's not a, end of the world scenario. I'm like, you don't really want to be saying that about any game you go into, that it's kind of okay to lose.
Yeah, I mean, Pitt the next couple of weeks has Georgia Tech, and then they have Miami, and so they're essentially running a playoff eliminator. Where now they're kind of eliminated, but they can ruin Georgia Tech's hopes because Georgia Tech's trying to get to the ACC championship game. We'll talk about it a little bit, and then they can eliminate Miami officially. If Miami loses that game, they're donezo. So they need that win against Pitt. Let's move on. Let's talk about the next game we have, which is Michigan Northwestern, which was in Wrigley Field. Interesting when they do these things. Are you a fan of that when they're at Wrigley Field or Fenway or Yankee Stadium?
I think it's fine for a bowl game. For a regular season game, it's kind of weird, especially at Wrigley because they can only go down one side of the end zone because it's too short on one side. Yeah. But I mean, it's kind of similar how I feel about outdoor games for NHL. It's a neat thing, but I think it's more for bowl games. I like that more for a bowl game than I do a regular season game.
Okay. In this game, credit to Northwestern and Preston Stone. They really stayed with this, and they made an effort, and they almost won this one. It comes down to the last second field goal with 2 seconds left, and Michigan wins 24-22. Bryce Underwood had 2 interceptions in the fourth quarter, so not a good look. Northwestern really had them on the ropes and looked like they were going to get the win, but God, Northwestern was 3 of 12 on conversions, just terrible, while Michigan was 9 of 14, a lot of short third downs because of their run game, so they're able to make those conversions easily. But Michigan had 5 turnovers in this game, -5 turnover margin, and they won this game. That is a miracle. They should be thanking their stars that they won this game, because with that amount of turnovers, you should never win a game that you have 5 turnovers. I don't care what happens. I don't know how they were able to survive that, but they did. They were able to run the ball really well. I know that they had 216 total rush yards with Marshall with 142 of them and 2 TDs, and Underwood had a rushing TD as well. So they escape. Your thoughts on it, Ian?
And I will say this, if they, despite nearly doubling them in yards, I agree. If it was any other team besides Northwestern, Michigan loses this game, no shot.
Oh, yeah.
because 5 turnovers is beyond unacceptable. And then Northwestern did convert on a couple of those turnovers because of the short field position.
Yeah.
But luckily, it didn't bite them too bad. But 5 turnovers and winning the game is like almost unheard of. That was almost as insane when I was watching the game. That was almost as insane when Texas A&M, came back, because that's not a statistic you see from a winning team. That's what I expected Northwestern to do. But Michigan, I agree, was very, very, very fortunate to come out on the right side of this one.
Okay, moving on. Arizona, Cincinnati. Sorsby, just too many interceptions. I know it's just 2, but still it was just too many, because he started the game off with an interception, and Fafita just took advantage of it. They played really well. Arizona, Fafita was just making plays, hitting his receivers downfield and taking what was in front of them. There were not it wasn't a ton of explosive plays. It was enough dink and dunk to get down the field and score a lot. And, their running back, Riscano, had a good game, 94 yards. It was honestly, Arizona's a team that we haven't talked a ton about. They haven't been out there that much, but they're a quality team. And, Fafita's a good quarterback. If you I know people heard about him in the last couple of years, but he kind of disappeared last year because they were really bad. And then this year they didn't start off too hot. So it was kind of under the radar. But now he's really he's up there. They're 7-3. For the rest of the year, they have Baylor next week and Arizona State in the final week. So, if they get to 9 wins, that would be huge for them. I don't think they have any chance at the Big 12 championship because they've got 3 losses in conference, but they definitely are a surprise team. I did not expect them to be one of the better teams in the Big 12 this year. And if they have a good finish, they could get up to 10 wins with their bowl win. So that would be huge for them. So any thoughts on this one? Well, I mean, I didn't expect Cincinnati to look as bad as they did in this one, because Arizona was in control almost the entire game. But Cincinnati came back to make it a 3-point game, and then Arizona gets that late field goal, and it was 30-24. But your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, but Cincinnati, I mean, they had a pretty good start at the end of the first quarter, 14-7, but it was just in the middle, and this has kind of been a thing with Cincy's, those second and third quarters, and then they have to play catch-up.
Yeah.
We haven't seen them play a full 4 quarters. Even with that one against Iowa State, they haven't played a full 4 quarters, letting Iowa State back into that one. I think that was the missing ingredient from the Cincy team, is that while they were still playing good per quarter, there were times Arizona would just dominate them in the other, and especially in certain categories. But I agree, Fafita had a great game. Sorsby, the 2 touchdowns were bad. The rushing attack was still very good. They were definitely playing Cincy's game. It was more balanced, but Arizona just had more big plays, and once they had the lead, it was just too much for Cincy to come back from.
All right, let's move on to USF Navy in the biggest game in USF's history. And then look what you see this on the screen.
It's USF's the Navy game. Yeah.
I want to hear your thoughts first.
Hang on. I'm going to put this statistic out, okay? Alex Golish in his time at USF has 1 win against a conference opponent with a winning record, and that was North Texas.
Yeah.
Since then, he's 1-6. And this was a game where, as I mentioned in their reaction, they were playing Navy's game from the very beginning. And that was the one thing I said, you can't do that. You play Navy's game, you're going to lose. You're not going to beat Navy at being Navy. And Navy, the one advantage I said was, Navy will obviously dominate in time of possession and play keep away, but for USF, that doesn't matter. But they needed to take advantage of those possessions early, and they didn't. And when Navy went up, 24-9, I was thinking Geez, that's going to be a lot to keep up. Now, credit USF did have an insane fourth quarter to come back from, but man, when it mattered most, the defense just, again, it was exactly what Navy wanted. They kept biting on the triple option. They kept looking out of position. I don't think there was a single time where they were playing man and the guy was in the right position, both, especially the linebacking core. The linebacker in that game was probably the worst it had been all year. And Navy was averaging like 7 yards a carry, which is the worst possible thing to do. And again, I credit to Byron Brown and the offense late. They did everything they could. Brown carried the team. They hit, 4 touchdowns total and almost 500 yards again. And Kroger had a breakout game too with 9 receptions. Yeah. But do you need, for at least for USF, at the very least, you could not have gotten Navy in these like 8-yard per carry plays, or even when they threw the ball. I said that I remember texting Georgia. I said, look, if Navy's going to throw it like 10 times, make sure they only complete 2 or 3. And I think Horvat went 8 for 15 in the game. And then when the backup came in, it was like 2 for 2. Yeah. I was like, you cannot let them do that. You cannot let Navy have a high completion percentage, because you're just asking for trouble where they literally beat you in every category. And they did, because USF was fooled. If they were passing it, secondary was out of position. If it was the triple option or sweep play, player was out of position. Now, I'm going to give the credit to Navy. They played more physical. They wanted it more. They were pushing that defensive line around and obviously creating the gaps needed. But again, I read an article in Tampa Bay Times. It is very frustrating to see this program just tease us over and over and over again with 2007, 2016, 17, 2000, and now 2025, where at the very least making a conference championship. It's insane that we live in a world where Temple has won a American Conference championship before USF. But it's just frustrating because USF, like I mentioned, was after the Memphis game, it looked really rough. But then they got a lot of breaks, and I was thinking, okay, that Memphis loss maybe put a fire in them. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Run through everybody. And it looked good, but once again, when it came down to a really big game, USF just couldn't get it done. And it's just very frustrating. I don't think this was as bad as the Memphis game, because back in my head, I was like, man, if they didn't blow that lead to Memphis, this wouldn't matter. I mean, it would probably lose home field position, but this wouldn't matter as much in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
But again, now with that, this was the only one I went down the rabbit hole for. All the other ones were like realistic ones, but I figured since it was USF.
Yeah, no, I want to hear it, because
this is what needs to happen. Okay. And I don't know how accurate this is, because no website put it out, because they effectively eliminated USF. So I had to use AI, my own intuition, and looking at schedules. So USF obviously needs to win out. USF needs Navy to lose to North Texas. And then North Texas needs to lose either.
Wait, they already played each other.
Oh, no, sorry. USF needs Navy to lose, North Texas to lose one of the last 2 games, Tulane needs to lose out, and then ECU needs to lose one more game, on top of the fact that USF gets back into the top 25, because the second tiebreaker is college football playoff ranking.
So it needs Navy to lose to Memphis.
Navy needs to lose to Memphis. North Texas needs to lose one of the 2 games, and they need Tulane to lose out.
And then ECU needs to
lose one of the games, and at the very least, USF needs to be in the top 25.
Wow, that is asking so much, because I don't know who is Tulane playing.
Tulane, I think they play like Temple and Charlotte. So
yeah, there's like
we're on, might as well be going to church, pray for that, because it's not looking too likely.
Like Charlotte is like one of the worst teams in all of college football, and there's no way that they lose to them. That would have to be honestly, it would be I don't even know how big of an upset, but it would be one of the biggest upsets ever if that actually happened. Yeah, it's crazy. As far as like my thoughts on the game, it's frustrating because like, you know, seeing USF go through all this stuff for eternity, you know, it's been ever since '07. Like they put themselves in position and then they just get embarrassed. And I don't think this was embarrassing though per se. They struggled in the first half, but again, you know, Navy just is a good offense and they were able to take advantage of it. I think, you know, I think they should have stopped running the ball. Like that should have been their dead giveaway. They should have just focused on passing the ball. Honestly, like running the ball against a good run defense like Navy had was not smart at all because it wasn't going to do much. And it really didn't do much outside of Byram's runs. And that's what they should have done. Like their run game should have been Byram throwing and Byram running. Like that's it. Like any designed runs were a waste because they weren't getting anywhere and they were burning them in the pass game, like destroying them. And it could have been way worse in the first half if they just, you know, really kind of put the emphasis on throwing the ball, which they didn't. They only got 9 points in that first half. They were chasing the conversions all game, so it really kind of backfired on them. And then Nico missed an extra point, which was ridiculous. How do you miss an extra point as we're a college kicker?
Yeah, that was the other. There were two plays in that game. The one was the one-handed catch. I remember, again, texted George. I was like, that's usually a sign God telling me this isn't going to be our day. And then when they scored, I was like, yes, let's do it. Okay, it's a 3-point game. And then he missed the field goal or the extra point. I went, wow, man, we really can't have nice things, can we?
Ridiculous. And then I would say, honestly, the thing that they should have done on defense is I guess they probably have to like use their safeties in the run defense, so they can't really do this as much. But I would have bracket covered Heidenreich because he's the only playmaker as a wide receiver. So like if you bracket coverage him, at least take him out of the game so he can't get wide open like he was so many times and like make all those plays because he was the difference in their passing game. The rest of those guys barely made a difference. You know, it was Heidenreich that was making all these plays, and it's like, man, if you eliminate him, they don't have anything else. Like he's the only one that can do anything in the pass game. And you know, the defense couldn't make stops in the second half. I will say, I pointed it out on our Twitter account where that play when it was 2nd and 9 and Woodson rushes up the middle and they stop him, the defense, and they push him back. And I showed, I posted the video, like, and they stop his momentum and push him backwards, and the ref doesn't call it, and he's literally right there. I'm like, how is it not called? Like, that was clearly a stop, and it should have been 3rd down, like 3rd and 4, and maybe USF gets a stop, maybe they don't. I don't know, but maybe they get the ball back with an actual chance to win it. I don't know. I just kind of mystified that occurred. But I'm not going to blame it on that. That the USF had their chances and just couldn't make the stops when they could have. And also, Navy, hats off to them. Like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, Navy's no good. But, like, you know, defensively, they played strong enough. They made plays in the first half. And also, you know, the Horvath is a really good quarterback who runs that system really well. And Woodson came in relief and made huge plays. I think he had 2 TDs, right? And so, like, he had a huge game. And it's like, I don't know. Like, I know people look down on the service academies and they don't think them as, like, high echelon teams. But they play really strong. And, you know, Navy's what, like 8-2 at this point? So, like, you know, they're not a terrible team. And I don't know. It sucks. Trust me, I'm frustrated. I wish the USF could have won this game because then they would be, you know, have a really good chance of getting there. Now it feels like they won't. I mean, at best, at this point, they can be 10-3, which would still be like the second or third best season ever in USF's history, which is not bad, but it's frustrating because it's like it felt like the team was like on the verge of really like doing something huge, and I don't know what's in store for everyone. Like I think Golish stays now. Like at this point, I feel like he's not going to leave. I feel like he'll stay another year, and if that's the case, the closer he gets to the OCS, the more likely I feel like he's going to stay. You know what I'm saying? Like if he stays next year, like he only has to wait 6 more months to get his own on-campus stadium, and I think he's going to stay for something like that because that has like way more juice than anything else. And then like who knows what happens from there? So like I don't know. It may not be the worst thing in the world that they don't do it this year, but it's still frustrating and it still hurts. It's brutal, you know, like it's like you want to see them win, especially in a game like this where they had opportunities to score and to win it out and they just couldn't do it. And I feel bad for Byron Brown because if Byron had won this game with his numbers, with, you know, 400 and 463 yards, I mean, that's a crazy day. 463 yards and 4 TDs. Like right now, he is staring at, if he had gotten like 1 or 2 more wins out of this schedule, he would be likely going to New York. But just by chance, because of these losses, he probably won't. But you have any more thoughts before we move on?
No, just again, it's the one thing I just want to see before I die is them win a conference, and it's another year that we're gotta wait.
We'll see. And you know, honestly, if they move to a bigger conference, who knows what happens from there? So, it's not the end of the world, that's for sure. Okay, moving on. Next game we've got is Oklahoma, Alabama. Man, this Oklahoma defense is so stout, man. Like they're just making plays left and right in this game. They forced 3 turnovers, and Alabama put up like decent numbers, and Oklahoma like offensively didn't have a ton, but it was also because Oklahoma had shorter fields in a couple of these possessions, so it looks a little like lopsided, but they were able to score. They had the pick 6, and then they had the Mateer touchdown, and then the one of them was like off of a Satania punt return as well for a short field. So they had short fields because of other reasons. So like 212 yards of offense looks deceptive, but you know what? Oklahoma does enough to win. They get that late field goal in the 4th quarter, and Alabama just could not do anything in the 4th. They really kind of were stuck in the mud, and man, credit to Oklahoma. You know, they were left for dead after that Ole Miss loss, and it was like, oh, they're not going to do anything. They've got this tough schedule going up, but they beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Now they have Missouri at home and LSU at home, which, you know, Missouri is kind of floundering since Perbula went out, and LSU, you know, barely beats Arkansas, and they fired their coach, LSU, so they don't have much really going on. So I don't know. I expect Oklahoma to win both these 2 games and to get into the playoff. What is their SEC? What are the SEC scenarios now with these 2 teams?
So Oklahoma is still out. They are out. But for the rest of the teams, Bama, what they have to do is they have to win at Auburn to clinch. They control their own destiny, but they have to win. Meanwhile, we'll talk about it. Georgia, if Bama loses, they will leapfrog them, and they will go to the SEC champion. They need either A&M or Bama to lose for Georgia to win, because Georgia's finished their SEC play.
Yeah.
And then the other team that's still alive is Ole Miss.
Yeah.
They need to obviously win out, and then they need Texas A&M and Alabama to lose. So then it would be Georgia, and because they would have I think it's like mutual conference for, I don't know, whatever tiebreaker. So it would be Ole Miss and Georgia for the conference championship, but they would need to win out and then have A&M and Bama lose in that one. So essentially, they would be like Georgia, where they would need A&M or Bama, but A&M needs Texas A&M, or I'm sorry, Ole Miss needs Texas A&M and Bama to make it to the conference championship. I know this is sounding very confusing, but there's all these moving pieces, so it's really hard.
Yeah, so bear with us, folks. We're trying to piece this together because there's a lot of moving parts, and I really do appreciate Ian you doing all this. So your thoughts on this game, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, the example I made about Michigan, being lucky it was against Northwestern, this is the other case scenario. The 3 turnovers that Oklahoma got, it was exactly how they won the game, is that they won the field position game. They had shorter fields to deal with, and then Mateer and the offense didn't really need to be relied on a lot. However, for Bama, they just had no answer for that Oklahoma defense. That was Oklahoma's best defensive game of the year, and especially going on the road to Tuscaloosa, that was an insane, I did not expect that because, obviously losing to Ole Miss and then losing to Texas, even as good as the defense have played, I didn't expect, this Oklahoma team to go on the road to Tuscaloosa and win that. But for, Bama, that's a really gut punch loss. It's not the end of the world. They obviously need to win out and then just beat Auburn and you're still in. But it definitely, maybe reshapes the whole college football playoff because now their 2 losses are Florida State and Oklahoma, and now there's more pressure on them to win at Bama at Jordan-Hare, which, for the record, has always been, for the last 4 times they've gone to Jordan-Hare, they've either lost or won by 1 possession. So it's not an easy place to win at, obviously, for Bama.
No, and you know what, man? It's funny when Oklahoma and Texas got into the SEC last year. Oklahoma really struggled, but they beat Bama last year and they beat Bama this year. So it's I don't know. It's funny because for years Oklahoma's defense was terrible. The Big 12 was just known for not having good defenses for a long time. It was Texas Tech put up a huge offensive outputs. Oklahoma was doing well on offense. And then it was Oklahoma moves over to the SEC. Credit to Brent Venables, one of the best defensive minds in the country. And, he's really turned that defense around. Dude, that game against Auburn, I think they had 10 sacks?
Yeah.
Something like that. It was ridiculous. In this game, they had 4 sacks. They are a fierce defensive line that gets after the quarterback the whole time. It's just relentless. And they make plays in the secondary and, get those turnovers. So this Oklahoma team, while the offense has not been top tier, it's definitely been good enough to where the defense makes enough plays and then the offense just does enough to really get those wins for them. So they would be a tough out in the playoff, and I'm curious to see if they get there. I think they can. But let's move on. Virginia Duke, another potential playoff team. And, Chandler Morris, man, the kid, when he plays, this Virginia team is night and day different. They're so much better with him than without him. This game wasn't really ever close. Mensa really never got going. In the 4th quarter, it was 31 to 31-3 at one point.
Yeah.
And then Mensa threw a touchdown pass, and they got a pick 6 right after that. So it made it look closer than it actually was because Duke didn't do anything after that. But no, UVA just runs the ball very well, especially Taylor. Morris. Morris. Yes, Morris, obviously the quarterback. But no, Taylor, the running back. And then Trell Harris. Man, that guy had a heck of a game. And, this UVA team, it is putting up huge numbers all year when they've had Morris. They look really good on offense. And it's they had 540 yards total offense. Morris had 316. He did have 2 picks, which was not good. Like I said, Taylor had a big game, 133 yards on the ground, 2 TDs. Trell Harris, 161 yards. a TD. So this UVA team is doing things, and like I mean, I don't know what to make of them going to the rest of the year because it's like they have Virginia Tech. I think they should win, and if they have a shot to get to the ACC, which what is their shot right now in ACC scenario?
Yeah, so for Virginia, they are simple. Same thing with Georgia Tech. They need to win out, obviously, with just beating the rivalry game in Vaught Tech. So if they win, they're in. They control their destiny. And same thing with Georgia Tech. They win, they're in. Virginia still, if let me see if I'm doing this right.
Yeah.
Pitt would need to lose to Georgia Tech or Miami, and Virginia would still make it even if they lose to Vaught Tech. So they still have a lot of control, but still, they control their own destiny. They're kind of running away with it. Miami, the only other one I did this one for was Miami.
Yeah.
Was Miami needs, because this was a long one, but they still have the third best chance, ironically, was Miami obviously needs to beat Pitt, and then Virginia needs to beat Virginia Tech, and then Pitt needs to beat Georgia Tech. Duke needs to beat North Carolina, and SMU needs to beat Louisville based on common opponent winning percentage.
Okay.
But it's looking very likely we're getting a Virginia Georgia Tech championship.
Yeah, which I think is most likely. I definitely feel like it'll be really that Georgia Tech Pitt game. It'll come down.
Yeah.
But I also feel like, I don't know. I feel like Pitt is going to have a really good shot against Miami. But I will counter the way Miami looked against CJ Bailey and NC State kind of gives me confidence in Miami's defense to really stop Heinzel. So maybe but I don't know, man. Like, how does Miami respond to a cold weather game? Like they haven't seen that yet all year, and it's going to be a difficult one for them. I fully expect Miami to beat. They're playing Vaught Tech, and then first. So I fully expect them to win in Virginia. But again, they play both these games on the road when it's very cold. If the Pitt game is a night game, which I think it will be, just because it seems likely that they'd push that one to a night game. I feel like Pitt it should be favored in that one, but we'll see. You have any thoughts on this game before we move on?
No, in this game, I mean, Virginia just had its, typical Virginia game, especially with Morrison. He did throw the 2 picks, but it was kind of, their kind of game. They had a great job running the ball, too. Taylor, I think, had over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. So it was a, all-around good game for Virginia. And, yeah, they were just running away with it, especially going into the third quarter.
Okay. All right. Next game we got. This was a barn burner, even to the very end. It was a late field goal wins it for Georgia Tech, 36-34. And, man, Tech looked like it was going to get beat again, and they pulled it out of their butts. And, dude, as far as offense, it was 1,165 yards of total offense between the two. It was like explosive play after explosive play. It was just like, BC would answer, and BC was down a little bit in the third quarter. They come back and they go up, and then Georgia Tech comes back and just takes it to them. I'm like, man, this game was this was probably the best game of the day. It was so back and forth. And this is a 1-9 team. This is a bad Boston College team that only beat, I believe, Fordham. And so, they were just a terrible team. And Tech was just letting them hang around. And, they couldn't really do much to try to take them out of the game. And credit to Haynes King, man. The kid is just unreal. He puts up huge numbers week in, week out, 371 through the air, 53 on the ground. So again, another 400 plus yard game. We only had 1 TD passing, but a bunch of rushing TDs for them. This team, I tell you, man, Georgia Tech is doing the things to win. And that's what's important here. It's yes, it does look bad that they struggled against a 1-10 team, but they got the win, and I feel like their game can cater to almost any team they play as far as like their ability to run the ball and to manipulate defenses, because they do a very good job of RPO and all kinds of different play action game and reverses and motion and everything. So I feel like that is very it will travel very well against any quality team. And I'm interested to see if Georgia Tech can take out Pitt here in this game, because this Pitt game is going to be a huge game. And it's in Atlanta. They have the next 2 weeks against Pitt and then Georgia. So I'm curious to see what happens, but I feel like Tech can at least win this Pitt game. And then, God, I want them to win against Georgia so bad. I'm so tired of Georgia winning all their rivalry games. It's like, how are they so blessed with winning all these rivalry games? Like last year, they should not have won that game. Like Georgia Tech was the better team and should have won that game. And it's like, so tired of it. And it's like somehow he's gotten away with the opposing teams having bad coaches, but now Georgia Tech does not have a bad coach.
Yeah.
We'll see. But your thoughts on this game?
I mean, this is the definition of being better to be lucky than good, because Georgia Tech was really lucky to win this game because, yeah, they should have just run away with it when the records are the opposite of each other.
Yeah.
It's not, a sign that you should be really in a dogfight with Boston College. But credit when the chips were down and the defense didn't show up, they at least had the offense. They at least had, Haynes, Kane, Mosley, Rutherford had a good game too. They at least had the, notoriety of kind of out-athleting Boston College, and at least in those crunch time situations that Georgia Tech has been in. They have been in these like close fourth quarter games. They have the experience there, and they did find a way to win. That was the thing. They found a way to win, although, again, it's very kind of troubling that you were struggling this much against a really bad Boston College team and a week after losing to NC State. Not that NC State is way better, but now you got to play Pitt to, solidify your ACC championship, which they should. But for Pitt, you got to be thinking like, okay, this, Georgia Tech team isn't invulnerable. They, there's some crease in the armor.
Yeah, for sure. And again, they'll find out next week if they are really up to snuff when they play against a really good team in Pittsburgh and their quarterback Heinzel. So moving on to NC State, Miami. What are your thoughts on this game? It was a blowout, so there's not much to really talk about here.
I mean, for NC State, that's a real disappointing way to respond after an upset to Georgia Tech, and you could just get absolutely annihilated by Miami. But for Miami, that was a very good, game. That's been the offense we've been waiting to see for a long time. The defense obviously just harassed Bailey, and NC State just had nothing going on. I think they had barely over 100 yards of total offense. Meanwhile, Miami had like almost 600. So every sense of the word, Miami dominated this game. And again, there's not much to be said. It was just a Hurricanes type game.
Okay. Yeah. 41-7, not really much to take from this one. Okay. Moving on to USC, Iowa. Man, it was pouring in LA the last couple of days. Like Friday into Saturday, it was like raining nonstop. And this game looked like it was going to continue being like a rain game, but it was raining for like the first quarter, and then it kind of just dissipated. And the field was still kind of crappy because it was waterlogged and, people were sliding all over the place. But there were no fumbles lost in this whole game. There was only one turnover, and that was that interception where it bounced off the player's helmet and USC caught it. So, like, in a game where you thought there might be like a million turnovers, there was only one, which is kind of spectacular. But USC does enough in this game to win. King Miller, again, has a really good game. Maava played well enough to win 254 yards. Ja'Kai Lemon, huge game for him. again, wide receiver 1. I've been saying it all year. The kid deserves to be the first wide receiver chosen in the draft, which I fully believe that is going to happen. He had 153 yards and a touchdown. Jacoby Lane had a good game. You know, as far as the defense, I think Iowa, when they went up 14-0, they were dominating in that point, and it looked like USC was going to struggle to keep up, but Iowa really didn't do much after that point because I think they only scored 7 points, and USC outscored them 26-7. So, you know, credit to USC for staying with their game plan. You know, they did enough to win this game, and now they have everything to play for. And, you know, we've talked about it. You know, USC has to win out. If they win out, they likely get in the playoff. And, like, you know, who knows what happens from there? Maybe they have a home playoff game here in LA. Man, that would be great. I would love to go to that playoff game in the Coliseum. Like, whoever they played, I'd love to go to that. So there is a chance that that could happen. This game against Oregon next week is a monster. It is everything on the line. And, you know, Lincoln Riley, I don't know. People talk trash about him, say he's going to leave USC, but he has them in the mix. And, you know, I don't know why people disparage him so much, but he had a Heisman winning quarterback his first year. He had them potentially near the playoffs when it was a 4-team playoff that year. If he doesn't get hurt, then the quarterback, then they probably end up going to the playoff that year. And then this year, now they're in the playoffs again, a potential playoff spot again. So that's what, 2 out of the 4 years potentially going to the playoffs. What more can you ask for as a USC fan? Like, that's a really good percentage right there. Like, if you're 50% for potentially going to the playoffs, that's a really good number. But your thoughts on this game, man?
Yeah, this game, I mean, when it was like 14-0 and then it was 21-7, I was thinking, okay, I see. Don't do this now. Don't do this when you have the biggest game of the year with Oregon. Don't waste it now. But I agree with you. They found a way to win, fought the elements. They scored the last 19 points of the game, and credit to the defense. I know Iowa obviously not an offensive juggernaut, but after, you know, Iowa got that touchdown and went up, you know, 21-7, had a really good, like, I think it was like a 9-play, 70-something yard drive. Iowa got nothing. They barely crossed midfield and had any chance of kicking a field goal to make it like an even closer game or anything like that. USC's defense definitely stepped up when it mattered, especially in the second half, and the offensive line did a great job. That's the thing that helped too, is that Maeva, you know, had a lot of time back there. Didn't really feel under pressure. Lemon, the other fruit. Yeah. Lemon, you know, had plenty of time to get open on those routes. Again, over 150 yards. I agree with you. You know, in my opinion, the best wide receiver, you know, to me, besides Jeremiah Smith. But I don't think he got sacked at all. I don't think Maeva got, you know, any, you know, mud on him. So good job by the offensive line. And USC, you know, they find a way to win out. Obviously, it wasn't ideal to have to come back, but considering the weather conditions and all that, it was still a very impressive win. And yeah, now they're set up for, you know, the game of the year now for their season against Oregon.
Yeah, and just crazy because it's like people wrote them off after losses to Notre Dame, which is a 10-2 team or potentially a 10-2 team, and what was the other loss that USC had? It was trying to think. Illinois, which I mean, I guess Illinois is kind of fallen off, but still, like, I don't know, they're right there. Like, literally, they're the third best Big Ten team right now, so they're in the mix for this stuff. Okay, moving on. I'm gonna let you do it because, you know, I seem to be, you know, in a good mood for letting you take the lead on these teams that we cover.
Well, I mean, are we surprised? Like, are we really surprised? Now, I will say this. Give credit to Florida. They, you know, this game, I thought it was going to be Ole Miss the whole way, especially after that loss to Kentucky. And my only thought was, if it's not a rivalry game, they're probably not going to play up to it. But they knew it was a big game at least, and obviously, if I said this, if that was an audition by Lane Kiffin, really wasn't the best because that Ole Miss team was way better and Florida was hanging in there. They had the lead multiple times, but the biggest thing was the rushing game. Lacey is the best running back in the SEC, and I think this game solidified it. I know Florida's defense has been battered, and I know all that, but he had 200 yards. He has set the record for most touchdowns for the Ole Miss Rebels, and they could just rely on the running game. And also, too, Chambliss, he had over 300 yards. He did have the pick, but again, the run game was just the engine that drove Ole Miss this whole game because they could still make it where it was on second down, where it was like 2nd and 5, 2nd and 4. You can do whatever you want, call whatever you play. You want to take a shot, or you want to give it back to Lacey, or you want to play conservative and try to aim for the first down. The playbook was totally open for Kiffin to use. Meanwhile, the exact opposite happened for Florida, where we kind of knew, look, if Florida's going to win these games, the running game has to be there, and Jaden Baugh is going to have to go off. And Ole Miss made it a mission where they're going to say, Lagway, you got to beat us. And credit Lagway. I know he threw the pick, but he had a much better game. I would consider this a bounce-back game. Yeah, it was 200 yards. He did have the touchdown. And
2 touchdowns.
Yes, wasn't perfect, but he did look better. But what didn't help was that the run game just wasn't there. I mean, Baugh had only 60 yards. I think Daniels had, carried the ball once, and then Lagway had some design runs. But I was barely over 100 yards. There wasn't a complimentary run game to help ease, make Lagway breathe in the pocket. Yeah. So, and that was completely by design by Ole Miss. They were plugging the middle and making sure they were not getting beat by Baugh or any of the running backs. In the end, I mean, Ole Miss found a way to win. And I know there's the pass interference call and all that, and the defense did get the stops when it did, but it just ran out of gas. It was just straight up. The other thing that's frustrating, too, is that, again, for the offense, as much as I was saying, yes, Lagway had a good game, but the offense still didn't get enough done. You scored 24 points in the first half, and you can't score a single point after that. You can't do that. You just can't do that. So, anyways, Ole Miss wins. Again, I don't think if Ole Miss was an audition for the Florida job, I mean, yes, they would obviously still hire him in a heartbeat, but I'm still thinking, you should have won by way more, man. Florida should not have been in this game. But in my opinion, the better team won. And, hopefully, I know people were having Lanesville, Florida signs and all that, and Ole Miss fans were chanting, "We want Lane," which is weird because it should be.
You already have him.
You already have him, but whatever. Anyways, I mean, I'm just numb at this point with Florida. So my only hope is that they can beat Tennessee and Florida State. If they can win, especially against Florida State, salvage this car wreck of a season.
If they win those 2 rivalry games, it would be huge, and especially to keep the home streak against Tennessee, that would be wild. And one of the worst years in Florida's history, and they still keep that streak going. Yeah. That would be crazy. Okay, yeah, but with this, I think because they still had a shot there at the end. Yeah. And when DJ throws that pass, he's running to the left. It's 3rd and 5. They're at the 30. Trey Smack can hit hit kicks from far. He can hit 45 plus pretty well. And he hasn't missed a kick, I think, since the first week. So dude, all you have to do is throw the ball away. And it's a tie game. I don't know why he had to force it there. It made no sense. It's dude, DJ, just throw the ball away. Play another down. You were out of the pocket. So all you had to do, because there was guys nearby, was throw it out of bounds. And you wouldn't have gotten if you throw it to the line of scrimmage and out of bounds, it wouldn't have been a penalty. Trey Smack kicks a field goal, and then Florida, is tied at that point. And then anything is possible. That game would have put game pressure on Ole Miss. At that point, there were 5 sacks by Florida. They were getting to Chambliss pretty regularly. and forcing him into mistakes. I will say, you know, Ole Miss was 11 of 15 or 11 of 16 on conversions. So they were dominating, getting 5 of 7 on fourth down. That's crazy. That many conversions on fourth down. But I don't know. Like you said, the better team won, but it didn't look great. Like Lane should not have. They like kind of because of those fourth down stops that the defense had for Florida kind of kept them in the game because Ole Miss, if they just got field goals there, it would have been a much higher score. But for whatever reason, Lane just kept trying to, punch it in. And the defense, credit to them, they made plays. And I will say, Miles Graham noted that he didn't give a better effort in the Kentucky game. And he came out and just, man, he was filthy in that game. He was great. Miles Graham had a heck of a game. And the defense all around looked great. Like, the guys were making plays left and right. And I know they gave up a ton of yards, but they still kept them in this game because the offense did nothing the second half. And if they had just done anything, just a semblance of whatever, this game could have been a much better game. And the offense just did nothing. So we'll see. Like you said, Lane, I don't know what's going to happen. I know I've people that I follow on Hater Twitter, those guys at the podcast, Stadium and Gale, saying stuff like, oh, that Lane might come. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I hope he does. It seems like he will. But we won't know until potentially the end of the regular season. But more than likely, we won't know until maybe Ole Miss gets eliminated from the playoff. Because I don't think this Ole Miss team is good enough to win more than one game in the playoff. And I don't even think that's the case. Because if they're going, well, I mean, they may host a game in the playoffs and they may steal one there. But I think if they have a neutral site game against a really good team, I don't think they're winning that game. So let's move on to last couple of games we've got is Ohio State, UCLA. Just a blowout. And Nico did not play. So, Ohio State really took advantage of that. And, it is what it is. Like UCLA has fired their coach and they've been struggling all year. So, you're going to lose to really good teams. They lost to Indiana very badly and they lost to Ohio State here. So it's not the end of the world. Those two teams are the top two teams in the country. So you're bound to lose to them, especially when you fired your coach. But not really much to say about this one because Ohio State, Julian Sayin didn't have a great game. They just, kind of dominated them on the ground. And, UCLA didn't even have any turnovers and you still just couldn't do much. They were 5 of 13 on conversions, while Ohio State was 8 of 11. So they were able to move the ball quite well. You have any thoughts on this one before we move on?
I mean, it was
UCLA fans.
For this one, it was, what you expected. Ohio State, obviously still the number one team in the country in UCLA. I mean, as good as the story it's been, with the, wins they had against, Penn State and that 3-game winning streak, then they faced the gauntlet. And, I mean, they were in it with Nebraska, but I felt like that was the last kind of gasp. And then you got to go on the road to Columbus. I mean, you can't really be mad at them, but Ohio State just, again, they were the better team, and there's nothing more you can say about that.
Okay, moving on. Georgia, Texas. What are your thoughts in this game?
I mean, another game where I kind of expected that. I mean, Georgia just flat out played better, coached better, looked better. There was nothing Texas was doing that was really kind of confusing Georgia, and Georgia's defense made very well sure, again, kind of similar to what Ole Miss did. They said Arch is going to beat us. Nothing else, no running attack, no nothing. The Arch is going to be the one to try to beat us, and obviously there was nothing there that they could do. So even Kirby Smart was pulling out the trick. They had the onside kick. They had some trick plays and all that, but it was surprising to see Georgia kind of rely on the big play. So that's the scary thing, is that Georgia's still just as dangerous going down the stretch. But obviously for Texas, they're all but eliminated from the playoff. I think at this point, especially any chance at an SEC championship, and I find it ironic that they've been in the conference for 2 seasons and they've already played Georgia 3 times, and they're unfortunately 0-3. But regardless, it is what it is. Georgia just showed how. I'm sure too they're kicking themselves because I still believe they could have beaten that Bama team, but there's just like some hex that Bama has on Georgia where they just can't beat Bama. But all in all, Georgia, the better team, won. Stockton had a great game, especially with those high percentage passes. And for Texas, they're on the outside again.
Yeah, I mean, and this game actually was 14-10 into the third quarter, into the fourth, and Georgia just kind of took advantage. They scored a touchdown shortly into the fourth quarter, and then that onside kick really changed everything because it was only 21-10, and then when they got the onside kick, that was basically it because they scored shortly after, and the game was over. But Texas, I don't know. I mean, Arch, he was all right, but again, they weren't able to convert third downs, and they were 4 of 12 on conversions. So when you're that bad on conversions, you're not going to do much. But Georgia wasn't that much better. They were 5 of 11. And Stockton had an interception that set up a short field for Texas, and they scored a touchdown on. And Arch had an interception. I can't remember when in the pacing of the game, but I don't know. This Texas team is just kind of not as good as we thought they were. Everyone thought they were the best team in the country. I think they're far from that. I think they're probably, an 8-4 team because I think they're going to lose to A&M in the last week. They should beat Arkansas next week, but yeah, that A&M team is going to probably smoke them, I think. But again, A&M looked rough against South Carolina, so who knows? Okay, last game we got, or last two, TCU, BYU. Bear Bachmeier, freshman extraordinaire, number 47, 296 yards through the air. LJ Martin, 88 yards on the ground. Kingston, huge game. Kingston just making plays left and right, had a rushing touchdown as well. They really kind of kept Hoover in check. McAllister had a good game for TCU, but that was about it. Really, honestly, McAllister was the only really one doing anything. All their other playmakers were really kind of silent. But BYU, I'm telling you, man, this team, I know they struggled against Texas Tech, but that was a road game. And I think Texas Tech just kind of, took advantage of it. But I feel like if we're in neutral site games or if BYU is the home team in a playoff game, I am favoring BYU right now. I don't know. This team, they're very sound on all phases of the ball, special teams, defense, offense. They make plays. They had a pick 6 in this game late. They caused a lot of turnovers. They had 2 interceptions that they got from Hoover. They did have a fumble loss. So the turnover margin was +1 them, but I like this team a ton. Bear Bachmeier is better than Retzlaff, and he makes them more dangerous. And Kingston and Chase Roberts are 2 very good wide receivers that are deep threats that can take it to the house at any moment. So this BYU team, I'm telling you, man, because next week, who do they play? They've got Cincinnati, which is a tough one. It's in Cincinnati, but they should easily beat UCF the next week on the road not on the road, but at home in Provo. But what are your thoughts on this game and BYU in general?
This was the definition of playing mad because obviously that Texas Tech game getting dominated when you've been scoring well over 30 points a game and you can only score a touchdown and looking like you're going to get shut out going into the fourth quarter. And then they come back home into Utah and just absolutely laid out against TCU. Again, fantastic game. Bachmeier had a great game. The offense was just, looked fantastic. And I think the key was to was, they just were dominating the time of possession and the third down conversions. They converted on half their third downs, and I think TCU only converted one. They were making sure the defense was making sure that TCU was going to have to, rely on big plays to win it, and BYU was having all the big plays this game because they were just playing catch up the whole time. But BYU, great win. Obviously, still they finish off with Cincy and UCF, and I already went through the scenario with them. But that's a definition of a response game. Is that one?
What's the scenario with them again?
So with them, I gotta pull it up. Hang on.
Yeah.
Okay. Where is it? Okay. BYU obviously needs to beat Cincinnati. Yeah, they have to beat Cincinnati, and
I think that's it because
they have to beat Cincinnati, win out, or have Arizona State lose while also beating UCF if they lose to Cincinnati. So they just need to win out.
Yeah. Yeah, because they have the did BYU beat Arizona State, right? Actually, I don't think they played each other.
I don't think they did.
Yeah. So, okay. So, what is the scenario if BYU beats if they beat Cincinnati, or let's say flip it, if they lose to Cincinnati but beat UCF and Arizona State wins out, and so they're tied, who would go over that? Would Arizona
State would go over.
Why is that? Why do they? What is their title?
That would be winning percentage against next highest placed common opponent, which in that case would be for
because they beat Texas Tech.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's
that would be so. It would be Arizona State because they beat Texas Tech.
Dang, that would suck for BYU if they lose to Cincinnati. I really hope they don't lose to Cincinnati. I think they should beat them. Sorsby is a good enough quarterback to keep them in the game, but I feel like BYU's just got a way better team.
Yeah,
they should be able to beat them. Okay, any more thoughts, and then we'll move on to G5 game of the week.
No, just again, great win for BYU, and this scenario can't get any easier. You just need to win out.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Ian.
So this game, once again, you want to talk about winning field position and turnovers. This was it because Kennesaw State almost doubled first downs, almost 100 more yards than Jacksonville State, but Kennesaw State committed 4 turnovers. And with that, Jacksonville State had much shorter field to, obviously capitalize on. This was kind of a, back and forth game early on, but once they were taking advantage of the turnovers, Jacksonville State got up to, 32-13, and Kennesaw State had a great, furious comeback, but really all Jacksonville State needed to do in the fourth quarter was kick a field goal. And once they got that field goal in, I think it was with, 3 minutes left or 27-something seconds left, that was it, because then it's a 2-possession game and there's, no chance to come back from. Now, I did say this game was an eliminator, and it very well could be, because Jacksonville State right now almost certainly clinches. They have 2 conference games left. They play Florida International, and then their last game is Western Kentucky, which I don't know if it's going to be a spoiler alert, but very likely that's going to be my G5 game of the week, because that will likely decide who will be 1 and 2 for the Conference USA Championship. But
what about Washington State, James Madison? It's going to be where is game day next week?
Oh God, I don't even know.
Because I thought I heard rumors that it was going to be at James Madison.
It's Oregon and USC is where they're going to be at.
Oh, perfect.
But Western Kentucky and Jacksonville State, that's 2 weeks from now. So They play FIU next week. So if they beat FIU, they clinch.
Okay.
For Western Kentucky, obviously, they need to. Let me go through this. I'm doing this on the fly.
That's fine.
Because I'm thinking of how can Kennesaw State get back into this. So Western Kentucky needs to beat Jacksonville State just straight up. Yes, they need to beat Jacksonville State. And then Kennesaw State They need to either beat Jacksonville State or Kennesaw State has to lose to Missouri State and Liberty. And Missouri State could actually get in if they beat Kennesaw State and Western Kentucky, and Kennesaw State lose out. So, wow, you could have a legit chance where either Kennesaw State or Missouri State in their second year in FBS go to the conference championship.
Wow, that's crazy.
But anyways, this game lived up to the billing. This could have been an eliminator, like I said. But with Kennesaw State, I mean, they got to be kicking themselves as one of those games because the turnovers just sunk them. It was easier field position for Jacksonville State. And with that, I felt like if they played a cleaner game, they probably could have won this one, and it could have been on complete, role reversal. We're now Jacksonville State's on the outside looking in to the championship game.
Because I watched the highlights of first through third quarter, and like, man, that Odom guy was a turnover machine.
Yeah,
like just all over the place. And then it really, honestly, probably the difference in the game, because I didn't even see the final score, was until you just said it. But that Hail Mary at the end of the half, where they just completely don't like brain farts, and the wide receiver catches it, walks in the end zone, and then they get that 2-point conversion. What was the final score you said?
35-26. So it was 32-26, and then they kicked the field goal, which pretty much iced it.
Yeah, exactly. So like the difference in the game was that Hail Mary. Like if they just stopped them there, they probably end up maybe even winning the game. So, man, it tells you like you cannot take plays off even at the end of a half. Like you've got to play the whole time, or you can lose a game because of that. Okay, that's it for us. We are going to be here on Wednesday. Ian had his article, his instant reaction on the USF game. It's up on haterradio.com. Check that out. For all of our socials, just type in Hater Radio. It comes right up. Ian, what's your socials before we go?
At Twitter, it's at G5 Gibson, and on YouTube and Instagram, it's at G_Gator_G. Okay,
that's the show. Catch us Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We're live most of the times that we try to do the show. And we'll talk to you guys on Wednesday. Take care, y'all.
All right.